Hi, Lily.
Hi, Constance. How are
How are
you?
you? Fine. Thank you for joining us for this Insta Live.
Well, thanks for having
Um,
me.
just for our audience, could you introduce yourself briefly?
I don't know who I am after 40 days in lockdown.
Oh my
So,
God.
so I'm a fashion writer, and I've been a fashion writer for over a decade now. And I write for newspapers, so like Women's Wear Daily, the trade industry Bible, as it's called, South China
Of
Morning
course.
Post. But I also write for independent publications in French and in English. So Behind the Blinds, which is French biannual magazine, and Instant, which is a very cool platform.
Yes, I know this platform. Very cool. Okay, so let's start. I would like to speak about the Fashion Week cancellations and the consequences of the fashion market and on the spring-summer 21 buying season. What's your feeling?
Well, as far as the cancellation goes, it was the only way
Mm,
for the industry. I mean, fashion is a reflection of what's going on, and there was no other way. I mean, it was the only ethical and moral decision to take to safeguard the health of everyone, given that at the time where it was canceled, we didn't know what was happening with the pandemic. And as far as the consequences on the fashion market, well, I would love to tell you I have the answers and charge a lot of money to to explain that, but unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball or a time machine. So it's a bit premature to see any consequences because we're in the middle
mm,
of
mm.
everything. What I do know is that for Spring Summer 20, there's a lot of stock stuck in stores. Wow, you can say that 10 times fast. And we don't know yet if consumers will be in the mood to buy when lockdown is lifted or not.
Mm.
We People are definitely still buying things, but I think it's quite a marginal effect. For fall winter 20, we don't know what stores will survive. Unfortunately, there's going to be business impacts. So obviously, some stores are announcing their closure, some stores are in trouble. We've all heard about the big department stores in the US, which are experiencing major difficulties. And what we do know is that it's not going to be like the financial crisis of 2008, where some
No, of
sectors were
course not.
impacted.
Mm.
This really touches everyone at every level, and financial hardship is something that in our industry, many people will know, and across all industries, and it will be a deep concern for consumers in months to come everywhere in the world. So there's no refuge territory and there's no refuge market for this. What I do believe is that there will be a
Mm-hmm.
spring summer 21.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, brands are continuing to work, people are continuing to work, but at this stage, as an industry, we're still trying to make sense of everything, and people are still trying to figure out how to position themselves, even just in this time, as for what they do.
Mm.
Definitely digital tools will come in play because travel restrictions are not going to be lifted
Of course.
anytime soon. We already know that we've been told not to book our summer holidays because borders will stay closed. And for example, for Hong Kong, I've heard that Cathay Pacific has canceled all flights until July. So we
Until
don't
the
know.
end of July or the beginning of the July? Do you
I
know
didn't
that?
want to
You
ask
didn't
because
know?
I didn't want to be
Okay.
too depressed about not traveling at all.
Okay.
So there definitely will be events and actions taken at the time that the season is happening at the end of the summer, but we don't know if it will be physical or virtual appointments.
Yeah.
And many people will obviously opt for virtual solutions, even if they do something physical.
Yeah. Okay, that's clear. Let's talk about the impact of the crisis for fashion brands. This crisis may be an opportunity to rethink how fashion works. Has the crisis raised awareness of fashion industry?
Well, as far as rethinking the fashion industry, I would love to say that yes, the industry will rethink itself and will become very aware and will become fully sustainable. But that is more wishful thinking.
Mm,
Every
of
challenge is an
course.
opportunity. Obviously, this is like a stupid inspirational quote, every challenge is an opportunity, but it's also a time to question what we're doing. And this crisis has certainly highlighted that our industry cannot continue to function in the way that it has functioned so far. The parts that we're breaking down even before this will completely implode. Obviously, this has impact, especially on the retail side, where concept stores and department stores were already questioning what they were doing and how they were doing it. But this is also an opportunity to come up with new solutions, because we're forced into a position of just sitting there and thinking. And this is something that hasn't happened. I mean, so far in my career, there has never been a month where you just sit there and think about your business and try to find solutions where you're not dealing with the day-to-day business. And it will force decisions and even push companies to take more risks, because the traditional ways of doing business, especially in the physical world, are blocked for now. And the pandemic has definitely started conversation, or at least made them audible, because we're not distracted by anything else. Everything else has become silent. And at the beginning, we've had people like Giorgio Armani, who wrote an open letter in Women's Wear Daily, calling for the industry to reconsider the insane pace. I mean, the 6 collections per year and the endless fashion week schedule. So this is definitely a conversation that is becoming more and more visible. And just yesterday, Saint Laurent announced that it would not be taking part in any dates of the 2020 calendar, or at least what's left of it. And because it wants to...
the 2020 calendar, at least.
Yes. But it also, the house also said that it wants to think about how it relates to people and their realities, and to leave time for creative work. So obviously people are becoming aware across brands, for individual designers as well as major brands, that things need to change. And this shows that COVID-19 has given a never had before opportunity to think about the calendar, because today we see summer clothes arriving in stores when it's 1 degree outside and winter coats in August. So this is obviously, it doesn't feel realistic. It doesn't feel logical. So with the everyday issues, we're thinking about these fundamental issues, not just what we do, but how we do them and when we'll be doing them.
Of course. And what did they unpack on their creativity, on the creativity of the designers?
I think there's no single answer for that, because it really depends on each individual person. Some people work really well under pressure or in difficult conditions. Other people just can't concentrate. For example, if they have children and they need to do homeschooling, well, obviously they don't have time to devote. If you don't have children and you're somebody who thrives in isolation, you probably will have a time of creativity now. There are certainly physical limitations, such as materials being inaccessible. But I have faith in the creative spirit of our industry, and the people who are deeply and truly creative, they'll find a way to express themselves, even with just cardboard and all that toilet paper that people seem to be stacking up everywhere. And there will be creativity across the industry, but that depends on individual creatives, and there's no generic rule for this.
You're right. We know before this crisis the importance of sustainability on the fashion industry. What are the main challenges, the sustainable main challenges now?
Well, I think that we can all agree that sustainability needs to remain a top priority in fashion and other areas of our lives. We can't continue fucking up the planet. That's for sure, because, for example, I see in the comments, if we kill off all the life around us, my lovely correspondent Fashion Biologique won't have anything to show on her Instagram. But this is not a sustainability related crisis. So I think this isn't something that is making sustainability more or less evident. It's just a time where we have the opportunity to think. And I believe that there's an awakening about sustainability at this moment, because we're faced with hard decisions on so many levels. And this is not just in fashion. It's also questioning what is essential in our lives, even in terms of travel. So fashion will have to hear and take into account these new parameters and consider, for example, production that needs to be more conscious in even in the smallest way. For example, about masks, we've come to realize that production needs to be more local and leave less of a carbon footprint. And in the fashion industry, this necessity to reduce the footprint goes from the fiber right down to commercialization. And there's an example, there's a white paper that was written by a platform called Ordre, and it's called Zero to Market. And it looked at the carbon footprint of a season of buying. And it was a shocking amount. It's 41,000 tons of CO2, the equivalent of CO2 consumption of a small country. That's enough electricity to power 40,000 homes for a whole year. And so this is something that we're going to see an impact on this immediately, because it's been weeks. And with the impact and impossibility to travel, many businesses, not just fashion brands, are going to consider if travel is truly necessary. I mean, what was done now in meetings, maybe it can be done on a phone call, maybe it can be done through a live, or can be done through digital tools.
Yes. Let's talk about digital tools, like you said. We know that the main importance of the digital tools, but now, what are the main digital challenges for fashion brands?
I think digital challenges aren't a new thing. I mean, the internet is the age that it is, and brands big and small, some of them woke up with this crisis realizing that they had no way to reach their clients, had no way to continue business because they didn't use the right toolbox. And I think the main challenge for brands and for fashion in general is to transmit the tactile experience of fashion across the internet. And
is it possible to transmit a total experience of fashion on the internet?
With the tools that we have now, there's one thing that is difficult. We know that the imaging capability is here, given that we have internet connections that are good enough. There's one thing that is still being worked on. It's the very tactile feel. So having that possibility of having a feedback, and I think solutions are coming, but it's still being developed in labs. But I'm pretty sure that one day, maybe soon, because of this crisis, we'll be able to have something like a pad where you touch something and it will give you the feel of a wool or something. But right now, these tools don't exist. And digital is one area that's been underexploited across the board. And people have been in confinement, and it has pushed acceleration both on the visible channel with social media. There's more brands going on different platforms that they were considering. For example, WeChat, you see the number of big houses opening their WeChat accounts right now. But also on the back office side, brands are taking the opportunity to rethink their processes and put in place these projects to be rolled out when business reopens. For example, they are looking at how customer relationship is managed, and small things like how you reach out to customers through digital channels. Before, it relied a lot on sales personnel being interested and taking the time to form these relationships with customers. Now this is going to be systematized, and systematized with tools that will help those relationships, because it is at the moment the only way to have a relationship with your clients.
Yes. We have seen a lot of initiatives on the part of young brands or young companies to help on his level, to help or to try to help on this wave of solidarity. And I would like to know if you have one or more examples that have struck you.
Okay, well, what I'm going to say is probably going to be a bit controversial. I would do an injustice to all the brands that have contributed something to the efforts on their own level, especially among the emerging labels. And it went from creating personal protection equipment for the hospital staff near them, volunteering in their community, raising funds, taking care of others, etc. A great number of them did them from personal initiatives, and they're not even communicating. This isn't an opportunity to communicate. There's no. So to all those brands and the people who have contributed anything, even just clapping at the window, or, you know, saying thank you to the delivery guy and giving him a bigger tip than you ever have given, you know, bravo and thank you. And I think it shows that as a group, humanity is not completely lost. But one thing that did stick in my mind and shocked me was the number of brands that created crap that we don't need, like t-shirts, selling them and indicating they're donating part of the profits to various charities. Do you really think that at a time where a record number of people are losing their jobs, anyone wants to buy a t-shirt for 100 euros with some of the benefits going to charity? Is it even ethical to produce more stuff with a message at a time where other brands are concentrating on making protective equipment for hospitals? And that's not to say that people should have stopped all their businesses, but I think this trying to capitalize and trying to insert yourself in these initiatives through the creation of special items was just, well, to me, shocking.
Yeah, understand, yeah. Let's talk about emerging brands. These young brands are being hit hard by the COVID-19 crisis. And I would like to know what are the main challenges for these young brands right now?
I think right now they're facing an amplified version of the issues that all independent brands are facing. And the biggest one is cash flow issue. As we said earlier, most of their stock for SS20 is stuck. They don't know if they're going to sell fall winter 20 either, because obviously retailers don't know what their future is about. So they don't know what's going to happen. It's difficult to get materials because of transport issues, factory closures. Italian factories have only very recently reopened for some of them, those who could ensure worker safety. Factories aren't available for prototyping. Emerging brands, it's a hell of a time. It requires a lot of faith in what you're doing, and you really have to believe in what you have to say, and you have to have something real to say. You can't be just a copycat brand trying to be cool or capitalizing on, for example, an influencer launching a brand. Well, I don't think this is the level of belief that you need to have in order to be a fashion brand at this time and to be an emerging designer at this time. And I salute the people who are letting their creativity come alive in this time.
Yeah, you're
because
right.
It's a time for artists. It's not a time for just something because you think it's going to sell t-shirts. I know I have a problem with that t-shirt thing. So
you don't like t-shirts, no?
I love t-shirts, but I don't like that kind of cheesy t-shirts.
No, I understand.
Thank you for giving me a platform to rant about t-shirts.
Okay. So what is the best solution for emerging brands after this crisis? What in communication, in sales, production, deliveries?
I think it's going to be more difficult for emerging brands to pick up retailers the traditional way. But it's also a moment where the digital world and technology, I saw a comment go past, technology is the future. Yes, I 100% agree. It's just you have to know how to use it. It's an opportunity for emerging brands to find their public directly, to federate a community of people and of likely interests. Right now, people are consuming content like never before. And how many of those are Insta Lives and Zoom conferences? So thank you to the people who are tuning in to listen to us this afternoon. This is a time to showcase your identity and to say who you are, what your values are, and to do this in the most honest and raw way. You have a platform. People have nothing better to do. They can just sit there and listen to you if they're interested. how to capture their attention is what people need to do right now. So I don't pretend to have all the answers or any answers. Hi, Muriel. But I think that
Okay, let's try. Yeah.
I think that the first thing brands need to realize, and this is valid for brands whatever their size, is that products can't be your brand's entire story. There's going to be a return to strong brand stories, and product alone isn't enough. It's never been enough, and it's most visible right now. That's something that fundamental that brands and designers need to understand, and that anyone who wants to sell something needs to understand, is that humans don't connect to concepts. They don't connect to philosophies directly. They don't connect to product unless it's something super functional. Like I can connect very well to my Nespresso machine because it gives me live coffee every morning. Or it gives me a shirt so that I can be dressed up and not go around naked. They connect to the values and to other people, and they connect to stories. Throughout history, we have transmitted our value system through myths and legends and storytelling, and people sitting around the fire and your grandparents telling you what is right and wrong. This is how people connect to concepts. Look at the RED initiative. The RED initiative was put in place to raise funds to combat AIDS. And the products under this banner, over 10 years ago, and all the products that were sold under the RED banner usually sell out. I mean, it goes from a Gap t-shirt, and yes, it means I'm a million years old, or even the Balmain sunglasses, which are being made available now for the COVID-19 relief fund through RED. But people connected to the story of others trying to fight something. Because if you just say, oh, let's fight AIDS, it's just a construct. It's not something that you can see. It's not something you can touch. But you can see other people. You can have a common goal. And this goal is constructed to telling the story in a genuine way. And I think brands that will communicate after the crisis they should communicate in the way they should have always communicated from the beginning. It should be honest, or as honest as you can be in a business. You don't have to say everything. But honesty, transparency, and heart. Fashion is a business, so everybody knows that we're in this to earn a living. I mean, it's the same. It's the same with the restaurant industry. You don't open a restaurant. It's not philanthropy. It is a business. You're there to earn a life. But you can do so in an ethical way. You can ensure, for example, that everyone is compensated fairly for their work, that the pricing remains fair. And the brands that will survive this on the long run are brands where you don't think, oh, this is expensive for what it is. The key to survive and start a new story, in my opinion, especially for those who have to close right now because there's no way for them to continue, is to make sure when you're selling something that the person in front of you, your customer, understands why they're buying this garment and why they're wearing it. And it can be through craftsmanship, it can be through what you represent, it can even be because you have a community of people of like interests. There's, it's up to individual brands to figure out what they're about. And what I'm afraid of is that fast fashion chains will capitalize on the lower price range. And I mean, we will all be price conscious at the end of this, let's be honest. And that with a little bit of greenwashing, they will be tapping into, for example, the sustainability issue that we were talking about. And this is something that might happen, but what values and what you do will be important after this, and definitely using the right tools to communicate will be a key to survival as well.
Yeah, you're right. Perfectly right. Just briefly, let's talk about collections. I would like to know in what form over the next months they have to present their collections. Is there a profound change in the way that they work?
Well, I think we saw this already starting in March with Asian brands, Press and Buyer, who had to use a lot of digital tools to make sure that they were able to connect to each other because they weren't always physically able to come. So it took a variety of forms. It can be digital previews with WeChat broadcast. It can be just filming a model and sending that over WhatsApp to buyers. Digital showrooms are definitely going to have a boom in demand. For example, Le New Black or Order as well. Jour. Jour is already offering other solutions connected to professional buying. So I think this will, especially with their connection to Ord now, it's going to extend the experience. People are going to travel less, not just because of health concerns, but because the tools will make it less necessary to travel so much. As for the Fashion Week, I think we had a first example of a solution that can happen with Shanghai, where brands were broadcasting live different types of presentation from live Q&A sessions, fashion films. It wasn't perfect, but it was definitely a start. And we saw a lot of creative efforts. And I think those were the most attractive. I mean, I'm thinking about Angel Chen. I'm thinking of Samuel Guiyang's films. I'm thinking about a virtual presentation by X Commons that was with 3D. It was almost like an animated film. It was amazing. What we're seeing here is an occasion for brands to really dig into the creative side of their collections and to extend their universe using a platform that doesn't require installation, massive space. It does require budget. That's for sure. The main difference that we have between Fall Winter 20 and SS21 is that the epidemic affected Fall Winter at the time of presentation, whereas SS21 is affected in the creative process. But I think brands will find ways, even the simplest way, for example, having a very detailed lookbook, they will find ways to communicate and to return to what's really essential, which is expressing what you have to say and making sure that this idea comes across whichever platform you're using.
You're right, yeah. And briefly, I would talk to you about the impact of the crisis in Asia, of course.
So we need another 2 hours. So everybody sit there, have another glass of water. We're in this for the long haul.
Okay, let's continue. No, briefly, what is your opinion about Asia, especially in China, of course, and what about the recovery and the current situation in Asia and in China?
Well, I think everybody in the Western world has their eye on Asia and China in particular, and they're hoping for the revenge shopping effect and for people to rush in with their credit cards and and I think in parts it's happening. I mean, we've all heard this. We've all read about it, the exceptional volume of sales. I'd like to do a shout out to my colleague Tian Wei in London, who broke the story on Women's Wear Daily, for Hermes, who sold millions on one of the first weekends. And
the famous example,
the most famous example. I mean, almost 3 million is a crazy amount to sell at any time. So, of course, definitely all the brands are rushing to open their WeChat accounts. They're setting shop on Tmall. They're reaching out to the Chinese customer. They're coming out with, new faces for the brands that are in those regions. But they have to realize that this will mitigate the effect of COVID-19. It won't compensate. It's going to fill a little bit the hole, but the hole is so huge that it's trying to dig into a mountain with a teaspoon. And the shockingly high sales amount from Hermes is not going to be the norm because Hermes is not the norm.
No.
Although it's a brand that has fashion shows, it's on its own schedule. It's connected to the schedule of craftsmanship rather than a fashion calendar. So this isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay. Let me check the hour. It's now over. I'm so sorry. Would you like to add something to conclude?
Well, I think one thing we didn't touch about is the consumption, and I think that what brands need to realize is that people will be more conscious about how they spend. when traveling resumes, people will go for experiences, even in Asia, even in China.
Yeah,
They will
of course.
go for experiences over material goods. They'll be putting more money in savings and retirements, choosing a house. And any post-lockdown spending is not guaranteed to go back to fashion, even if they have spending money. It might even be beauty. And I think that what is essential is that people need to understand that you need to build relationships with
Of
your
course.
customers, with your audience,
It's the
and that
key,
it's
of course.
absolutely, it's the
Mm.
key. You need to start treating communication tools as two-way streets. It's not somewhere where you broadcast. It's not, you're not talking out from a mountain. You're having conversations. You're listening to what your customer wants. And what is essential is that clients have always been the way to this. And I think brands have, for too long, thought that they could just broadcast things, you know, in the same way that you receive a million newsletters saying, buy this, buy this, buy this. But what if I don't want to buy what you're selling? Will you
Mm.
listen to me when I tell you what I would like to buy? Are you going to address that or not? So communicating is always going to be the way out.
Same as us.
Same as us.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Lily.
Constance. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Tranoï. Thank you to
You're
everyone who
welcome.
listened to me going on for 32 minutes.
Yes. Thank
And
you,
hope to see
everybody.
you all soon.
Yeah. Hopes. Stay safe. Many thanks,
Yes, stay safe,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you, Lily.